Well, hello there, and welcome to my kitchen table, a place in most homes where we can sit with family and friends and just talk for hours. Right, we're off to Wichita today, and it is the most populated city in the US state of Kansas, with a population of 397,532. That's according to the 2020 census. Wichita actually began as a trading post in the 1860s, and it was incorporated into a city in 1870. It became a destination for cattle drives travelling north from Texas to the Kansas railroads, so it was given the nickname of Cowtown. Wyatt Earp. Now, I've got to say this. Years ago, I actually thought Wyatt Earp was one of those made up characters, just for cowboy films. Obviously, I was wrong, because Wyatt Earp actually served as a police officer in Wichita for about a year before he actually went to Dodge City. There's something you didn't know. So, if you're ready, take a seat and I'll tell you a story. The Wichita Massacre, also known as the Wichita Horror, was a week-long violent crime spree carried out by two brothers, Reginald and Jonathan Carr, in the city of Wichita, Kansas. It was carried out between the 8th and the 15th of December in the year 2000. 5 people were killed, and 2 other people, a man and a woman, were severely wounded. The Carr brothers were arrested and convicted of multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, robbery, and rape. The early lives of Reginald and Jonathan Carr were rather harsh. They were born in Dodge City. Their parents argued a lot and would become extremely violent with each other. Their father, and later their mother's boyfriends, would sexually abuse their older sister. Eventually, mother and father divorced, and their father immediately abandoned his old life. He just got off, didn't look back. Their mother, Janice Harding, would go on to have a second marriage that was as violent, if not more violent, and unsuccessful as the first one. This husband, on at least one occasion, held a gun to her head. Nice people. Occasionally, Reginald and Jonathan would also live with their maternal grandmother, who, like their mother Janice, was also prone to sudden outbursts of rage. Yeah, Janice was also abusive to them. She'd punish them by whipping them with an electrical cord. The broken lives of the brothers, led at home, practically defined them. Reginald would start fights at school and had a notably bad performance record there. He was protective of his brother, though, and he was experienced with the knowledge of sex and drugs. This reportedly began at the age of 6. Jonathan had thoughts of ending it all, and actually once attempted to end it all by drinking antifreeze when he was only 16 years old. Reginald's early adult life became a series of failed marriages, and both brothers had established lengthy arrest records. One day, during 2000, the Carr brothers made a decision to go on a crime spree in Wichita. Nobody actually knows what led them to this decision. The two brothers started with robbing 23-year-old assistant baseball coach Andrew Schreiber. That was at gunpoint, and that was on December the 8th, on the day they arrived in Wichita. 3 days later, At least one of them next approached 55-year-old cellist and librarian Anne Walenta as she parked her SUV in the front of her own home. She was held at gunpoint in what appeared to be a carjacking, but she attempted to drive away, only for the attacker to riddle the car with bullets, severely wounding her. A neighbour called 911 when Walenta's car horn was heard blaring. It was actually activated when Walenta collapsed and her head fell forward onto the steering wheel. On a snowy December 14th, the Carr brothers invaded 12727 Birchwood Drive, which at that time was housing 5 people. Brad Haker, who was 27, Heather Muller, 25, Aaron Sander, 29, Jason B. Fort, 26, and his girlfriend, Holly G., who was 25. Her real name was never actually disclosed due to a policy of protecting survivors of sex crimes. There was also a little dog, a schnauzer. Her name was Nikki, and she belonged to Holly G. B. Fort was a local high school teacher. Baker was a director of finance with a local finance services company. Muller was a local preschool teacher. Sander, a former financial analyst who had been studying to become a priest. And Holly G. was another teacher. The Carr brothers went into the home at night and they gathered all 5 of the residents in the master bedroom before robbing the house of its valuables, including a diamond engagement ring that they found in a box of popcorn. Jason B. Fort was planning on proposing to Holly, and he just hadn't found the right moment. And this is how and when she found out. After burgling the house, the Carr brothers forced their victims to strip naked and bound them. The brothers then repeatedly raped the 2 women and forced the men to engage in sexual acts with the women and the women with each other. They were all told if they were unable to perform, they'd be killed. Afterwards, the brothers took them to a bank where they forced them to empty out their bank accounts and give the money to them. Then they drove the 5 of them to a snowy soccer field where they executed them one by one, shooting them in the head. Before leaving, bear in mind, these 5 people were just lined up in a row. They ran over them with the truck that they'd stolen belonging to Jason B. Fort. They ran over them. Obviously, they weren't dead enough. Holly G. actually survived because she was wearing a plastic beret in her hair and it deflected the bullet to the side of her head. But the other 4 died instantly. After the Carr brothers drove away in B. Fort's truck, Holly walked naked for more than a mile in freezing weather to seek first aid and shelter at a house. Understanding the position that she was in and that she could literally die at any moment, before getting any medical attention, she reported the incident and descriptions of her attackers to the couple who took her in before the police arrived. The killings, the Carrs returned to the house to ransack it for more valuables. But while they were there, they used a golf club to beat Holly's pet schnauzer, Nikki, to death. Sick, twisted, and extremely dangerous men. I could use other words, but YouTube would kick me off. The Carr brothers' quadruple homicide grabbed the attention of local TV news stations, which is actually what aided in the arrest. It started when a man watching the news remembered seeing a truck at his apartment complex whose description matched that of Jason Befort's truck, the one they stole. Another resident of the apartments also recalled helping a man carry a large screen TV to his room. Police were notified and arrived at the apartment, where they arrested Reginald Carr, who was later positively identified by Andrew Schreiber as one of his robbers. Andrew was the first guy that they robbed when they arrived in Wichita. Meanwhile, the mother of Jonathan Carr's girlfriend returned home to find Jonathan asleep on the couch with Jason B. Fort's Aunt Ollie's engagement ring in his possession. She called 911. When the police arrived, Jonathan noticed and attempted to escape, but they caught him after a short chase. Anne Walenta, the lady that was shot in her car, later positively identified both brothers in a lineup, and that was shortly before she passed away from her gunshot wounds. Their vicious crimes created panic in Wichita, resulting in an increase in sales of guns, locks, and home security systems. The resulting trial was a rather dramatic one. When a trauma surgeon reenacted the shooting of Anne Walenta, the description was so graphic that one of the jurors, a 51-year-old, fainted and had to be taken to hospital to be checked over. Much of the evidence that was left behind at the crime scenes, as well as the testimony of Andrew Schreiber against Reginald and Jonathan, proved to easily overwhelm the testimonies defending them. In the end, the Carr brothers were found guilty of most of the counts against them: capital murder, aggravated kidnapping, robbing, rape, and animal cruelty. The judge then sentenced them to be executed. The district attorney said that he believed that their motive was robbery based on evidence. With the help of Holly's testimony at the trial, both brothers were convicted of nearly all of the 113 counts against them. Like I said, this included kidnapping, robbery, rape, 4 counts of capital murder, and 1 count of first-degree murder. Reginald Carr was convicted of 50 counts, and Jonathan of 43. They were each sentenced to death for the capital murders and life in prison. Although, how they could serve life in prison when they're dead totally eludes me. But anyway, so they got death for the capital murders and life in prison with decades to serve before being eligible for parole. You can't parole a dead man. Obviously, they thought that this was a bit rough, so their cases were appealed. There'd been continuing attention to the Carr brothers case because of various rulings about the Kansas death penalty law and decisions by its High Court on such cases. In 2004, the Kansas Supreme Court overturned the state's death penalty law, but the state attorney general appealed the ruling to the US Supreme Court. It upheld the constitutionality of the state's death penalty law, which returned the Carrs and other condemned killers to death row. On July 25th, 2014, it's 10 years later, the Kansas Supreme Court announced it had overturned the Carr death sentences on appeal. The six justice majority said they did so because the trial judge had failed to adequately separate the penalty proceeding for each defendant. According to a release from the Kansas Supreme Court Public Information Officer, the court unanimously reversed three of each defendant's four capital convictions. How does that make sense? That they've been sentenced to death on four convictions, sorry, capital murder convictions, but they've overturned three of the four. So does that not mean that they're still on death row for the fourth one? Oh. Right, they said that was because jury instructions on sex crime based capital murder were fatally erroneous. They couldn't just say it had many mistakes. Erroneous. The three of the multiple homicide capital murder charges duplicated the first. Oops. Somebody used copy and paste. They were all killed in exactly the same way, so why wouldn't it? Oh, anyway. The High Court upheld most of the convictions against each of the brothers despite their purported lower court errors. The court ruled that the brothers were entitled to separate sentencing trials, as differentiation in the moral culpability of two defendants can cause a jury to show mercy to one while refusing to show mercy to the other. But they didn't. So what's the problem? Even if the death penalties were not upheld, each of the Carrs were already sentenced to serve at least 70 to 80 years in prison before being eligible to apply for parole. And that ain't going to happen either. The Kansas Attorney General appealed the High Court's ruling to the US Supreme Court, which in March 2015 agreed to hear the Carr brothers' sentencing case, together with another death penalty case from the same state. In January 2016, the United States Supreme Court, in an 8-1 ruling, reinstated the death sentence, overturning the Kansas Supreme Court, deciding that neither the jury instructions, which were challenged by the Carr's legal counsel, nor the combined sentencing proceedings violated the Constitution. The Kansas Supreme Court affirmed the death penalty for the brothers on January 21st, 2022. And here we go with something else. The victims were white and the Carr brothers are black. But the district attorney held up that there was no obvious evidence to support a racial crime. And I agree with him. Based on the robberies, Sedgwick County District Attorney Nola Fulson decided against treating these incidents as hate crimes. Conservative media commentators David Horowitz, Michelle Malkin, and Thomas Sowell said the crimes were downplayed. They felt the national media suppressed the stories due to political correctness. Sowell, an African American conservative, has said the media has a double standard regarding interracial offences, tending to play up vicious crimes by whites against blacks, but play down equally vicious crimes of blacks against whites. Why can't they just say one person against another person, irrespective as to the colour of their skin? Heather Muller was a preschool teacher at St Thomas Aquinas Catholic School. The school established an annual award the Heather Muller Love of Faith Award, given to a deserving 8th grade student in her memory. Anne Walenta was a librarian and a musician. She played the cello at Wichita State University. Her family established the Anne Walenta Music Scholarship Fellowship at the university in her memory, which is lovely. And that concludes today. Sorry if I gave a bit of a rant, but what can I say? Thank you so much for allowing me to tell you this story, and thank you so much for listening. If you found it interesting, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. It's free to do, so don't hold back. All it means when you subscribe is that YouTube know that you want to watch my videos, so they will tell you when the next one is posted. That's all it means. Okay, that's why it's free. And remember, laughter is a smile without boundaries. Go on, smile. You never know where it'll lead. I've been Sue, TTFN.